Good morning, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to another Bookish breakfast. So today I'm going to be doing a tag video. So I'm going to do the hashtag wear a mask tag that was created by Brian at Bookish as part of one of his Saturday hodgepodge videos. So this tag was inspired, well, I suppose negatively inspired by Brian going out and about in his local community and seeing a lot of people not wearing masks. And he thought, what can we do on BookTube to just talk about the idea of wearing a mask and continue to encourage each other to wear masks? So he created this tag. I should say before I get any further in that I'm recording on my tablet this morning, and I really don't know how that's going to work in terms of sound and video quality. Like, the screen looks okay, but I know the angle's a little bit weird. Why am I doing this? It's because I've managed to break 2 phones in the last week. So I broke my phone that I've had for like 2 years. It died finally, and then I got a new phone, and then 3 people called me on the same day, and I was so surprised to get so many phone calls that I just smashed it. I just panicked and smashed the phone. Not really, I dropped it, but I always have my phone in a protective case because I drop phones very often, but unfortunately the protective case hadn't had a chance to arrive yet because I'd only just got the new phone. But fortunately both phones were secondhand, so and also I've got, way too much technology because I've got a tablet to use instead. So yeah, that's that part. So now the wear a mask tag. Let's just put a little mask on for a second. It's not hard. It's not even that uncomfortable. Like, it's fairly normal now to sit like this and talk like this. It gets difficult, like if you're talking a lot. These ones in particular, they're quite, like, there's a lot of different kinds of the surgical ones. These ones I found yesterday. I was doing some training wearing a mask, and if I breathe in sharply while I'm trying to do my presentation, it like sucks right into my mouth. That's a little bit uncomfortable, but overall it's not too bad. Roz has already showed you, my mum, one of the FFP3 masks. So when we had them for training at the hospital, like, you have to wear one to see if it fits you. You wear it for about 5 minutes. And I brought it home and I gave it to Roz just to show her what it was like. I honestly thought she would have thrown it away by now. But anyway, so she'd show you the ones that are like really, really tight. They create as close as possible a seal, and they are supposed to prevent you from getting aerosol related infections. And they seem to have worked, because myself and a lot of my colleagues working in critical care worked throughout the pandemic with a lot of very poorly patients, doing a lot of aerosol generating procedures, and very, very, very few of us got sick when you consider the amount of exposure that we would have had if we weren't wearing the masks, and obviously all of the other PPE. But I'm really glad that I don't have to be wearing them right now at this moment, because the cases in the hospital aren't at that point. However, cases are increasing, and cases in our local hospitals are increasing. So in the last few weeks, people have been saying, the numbers are increasing, but it's okay because they're not in the hospitals. Well, now they're starting to be in the hospitals. So we do need to start being quite concerned and quite careful with what we're doing when we're out and about, including wearing a mask. Because guess what will happen if you don't wear a mask? If you were to catch COVID, unfortunately, which obviously I hope you don't, we all hope that everybody doesn't, but say there is a person that's walking around outside and they're not wearing a mask, and for some reason they're involved in some kind of situation where they are face to face with somebody for a longer length of time, you could fall over in the shop, and then suddenly people rush over to help you, and then you've been really closely exposed to them. And the mask is to protect other people from you, but it's also, to an extent, it protects you from other people. And you catch COVID and you get a little bit poorly, what are you going to do? You're going to come into hospital and we're going to put a mask on you. And I guarantee you the masks that we will put on you in hospital are a hell of a lot more uncomfortable than these. And if, like, the basic little oxygen mask doesn't work, then we'll just move to bigger masks and tighter masks until you end up with one that is like a bubble around your head. And that is quite intensely claustrophobic and uncomfortable and very, very difficult to communicate, and causes all sorts of other problems throughout your body just for the pressure that we have to deliver oxygen through these masks. That is normally the route of care that we try to go down now with COVID. As far as I'm aware, that's our current guidelines, because we want to avoid intubating people, because intubating people has been shown to not be very successful. That's what we wanted to do at the start of the pandemic, because that's our solution to everything. We'll just pop a tube down and let people kind of ride out the infection. Didn't really work. It was really quite bad in terms of outcomes. So yeah, either wear a mask out in the community, protect yourself and protect other people, or wear a much more uncomfortable mask in hospital. Yeah, it does bother me seeing people out and about without masks. It particularly bothers me when people say, like, when people complain about how uncomfortable they find it wearing masks, because at times during the height of the pandemic, I was lucky my skin was relatively robust, but my colleagues were walking around wearing like, it was a normal look to have like a little brown plaster here to protect your skin, because it would just break down over your nose. I had like a rash all around my chin, just from the constant contact of the mask underneath my chin. People would have, like, you'd come out with like your ears marked with lines where the elastic went. Even just pulling your hair out with the elastic, taking the mask off. There were a lot of things about those masks that were uncomfortable, but we did it because we needed to do it, and we wanted to do it. Like, we wanted to be protected ourselves and be able to protect other people, and to help to make people better. So I don't want to be ranty or complainy, she says, after ranting and complaining for about 5 minutes. But it is important. It's a very little thing that you can do. And I think a lot of people have mentioned that it's become kind of like a political thing, that people don't believe in this need to wear masks, and people kind of, maybe particularly in America, but people think that it is like a representation of their like personal rights and refusal to submit to some kind of control. So Brian asked us to pick out some books that fit one of 3 prompts. So characters wearing masks, characters, I think, who disguise something of themselves, and characters who wear protective headgear. I've added a bonus 4th prompt, which is characters wearing the silliest headgear that you can possibly find. So I think the idea was that you could pick and mix, and you didn't have to do all of those prompts if you couldn't find characters to match them, but I have managed to. So for my first one, people wearing masks, I've got Stravaganza, City of Stars. This is the 2nd book in a series that starts with Stravaganza, City of Masks. So this is a children's fantasy series in which a child from the real world finds some kind of talisman or token, and this, sleeping with this in their hand, transports them to another world, the world of the Stravaganti, where things are similar but just not quite the same as our current world. And the first book, City of Masks, the little boy is transported from England to Venice, or the equivalent of Venice, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's like this, it's got this kind of like beautiful patterning on the paper, but instead of this circle, it's just got a silver mask across the front and like 2 blue eyes coming through it. And I just really loved the role that masks played in that book, because it's all about like disguise in the streets of kind of like old-time Venice. And I read this as a child, absolutely loved it, and eventually we went to Venice as a family, and I bought myself a little mask. I think it was pretty much all of my pocket money for the whole trip, but I've still got it now, and I still think it's quite beautiful, really. So yes, that's my Venetian mask and Stravaganza, and that book is by Mary Hoffman. So, second thing, a character who disguises something about themselves. So, where do people effect disguises most frequently and most well? Murder mysteries. So I've got an Agatha Christie for you. I've got The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, because I think the way that things are disguised in this book is just absolutely perfect. My favourite quote is, "Every one of you has something to hide," and there is definitely a lot of stuff hidden within this book. And I think the way in which Agatha Christie disguises the murderer in here is just pure genius, and it delighted me when I read it. So I would strongly recommend this book for characters who disguise a part of themselves. The next one is characters who wear protective headgear. So this one is kind of not entirely serious, because I've got The Handmaid's Tale. So in The Handmaid's Tale, the handmaids have to wear, every time they go outside of the house, they have to wear like a white cap that stops them from being able to see to either side of them, and stops other people being able to see them. And the premise for why they have to wear these masks is to protect them from the gaze of men who might be wanting to do them harm. So that is the kind of weird political not true, forcing people to wear masks, claiming it's for their protection when it actually isn't, like dystopian state thing that you should be worried about. If somebody's saying, you need to wear this so that nobody can see you, then yeah, you should worry about that. if somebody's trying to get you to wear a mask to protect your health and the health of other people, that's a different story. So that's a protective mask. And finally, I just wanted to share this. So I was looking in this, I was looking for pictures of people wearing helmets for protective headgear, but then I saw some exceptionally silly headgear. So this is The Sister Queens. It's a non-fiction book by Mary McGregor about Isabella and Catherine de Valois. I haven't finished reading it because, honestly, it's a little bit bad as a book. It's not the best written historical non-fiction, but it does have some illustrations. Starting with some of the silly hats on this page, in particular these guys with their excessive crowns, and I was like, oh, they look a little bit silly. But then I turned the page and I saw this amazing lady. So this is a portrait of Isabella of Portugal, and yeah, I just think, wow. I chose to kind of add this prompt in because, particularly at the start where nobody'd really been wearing them before, I know that people felt self-conscious about wearing masks and felt like they would look silly if they went out and about wearing masks, and that, you know, other people would judge them. And I did think that the first people who were wearing masks before, when we thought that masks weren't really very protective, I did think it was a little bit ridiculous. But now I really don't, because we now have more and more evidence to back up the fact that masks do work. So yeah, you may look slightly silly, potentially, but you will never look as silly as Isabella of Portugal, and she was a queen, so, you know. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. That is the end of my wear a mask tag. Thank you, Brian, for creating the tag. I don't believe anyone has tagged me, so I don't have anyone to thank for that, and I'm not going to tag anybody else because my record on doing tags is so bad that I can't really try and force somebody else to do one. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will hope to speak to you soon.